Alright, so I am gonna finish the top of this apple here. Bring these tones way down so they're much closer to these here in the background here. Bring these tones down more to that shape is still going to survive and stand out. Bring those tones down. And I'm bringing those down with my 4H. I'm going to go back in and bring them down a little further with my 2H. Just going over and refining these tones. I'm going to drop this down a little bit further with the 2H. Make that blend a little more seamlessly so I don't have that standing out. Going back in here, dropping these down to keep up with those tones back here. This is a good time to go in with my pencil eraser and refine that highlight at the core of the apple because I've lost it in there just a little. So I'm going to go back in here and get these highs to come back up and just model that out just a little with my eraser. Just slightly lift it up, slightly lift those tones. Bring those up. Then I'm going to come out over here and get rid of all of that excess graphite on my eraser. So I feel pretty good about that. I'm going to go back in over here on this edge with my 2H and bring this all down because this is all much lower in value than I'm showing it. In fact, I'm going to come back in with my B and I'm going to bring this all down just a little bit more to this in here can be down and the same tones and value as this over here. So take all of that down. It's still, that edge still stays there fairly nicely. This comes in here a little bit at an angle and bring that down, bring this down, bring this all down. Because the only white I really have is this white in here. Go back in here with my 2H, develop these, push those a little darker, push these a little darker. Alright, I think I'm pretty happy with the tones in my apple and I'm going to leave that alone. I'll probably come back in here and there's like little dots in there that I think I can pull out. Yeah, there's like a couple where those little indentations in the apple. I'm going to pull some highlights out just to give that form a little bit more believability to it. Make it look a little bit more like a real apple. Take these around here and follow the contour here. That one got a little too big. And then back over here. So I'm just going to go back over that because that one got a little too big. Take it back down so it doesn't pop out so much. Take it back down with just a 2H. I think I feel pretty good about this. I'm going to twist this and put a little extra layer in through here. Drop this down so it curves a little more. And I think I'm going to take this value where I make this darker in here. I think that's what I want to do is Make that just a little darker in there. Make this a little darker in here. Again, to help that contrast moment really happen more. Take this all up so it's a little darker and rolls just a little better than it's currently rolling. Roll that surface just a little more. Take that up there. That's dark there, here, and around. Take that in there, darker in through here. Again, to help pop that white out just a little better. Maybe make it a little smaller. Take that in there. Feel like I could drop all of this down a little darker to keep up with. Drop that down. Drop that down a little more. Drop this all down. I'm going to drop this whole back side of this apple down and value a little more. I'm using my 2H, so I'm going to go back in and use my B over here. Drop that down to push it around the corner. That's going to indicate it shifting back to that direction a little better. Bring this in, just make that a little darker, and I think that's a little more satisfying. It looks a little more real. I'm going to take that there, that there, this over here. I think I'm going to make this darker in here. Again, darken that up, darken that up. Yeah, so I've got some reflected light happening. I think I'm going to go in now and already refine this out because I don't think I'm going to go back up into the apple area much. I'm going to twist this here too. I'm using my workhorse, that's what I like to call my pink eraser. Go back in there and really clean up that edge. So I'm using it just to go right around that edge and really pick up anything that's outside of that edge that might be interfering with that strong line that the edge of just where it's got value is producing. So this got a little too, that's a little too outside, but I think what I'm going to do is shape that edge over here a little bit more by going in here and just rebuilding that edge with adding in a little more tone for my pencil, getting a little darker in here with that sliver that's in there. Sharpen up that edge just a little with a little fake outline. There we go, and it's blended into there real nicely. So I think that looks pretty good in there. In here, that looks pretty good. I think I can get a little darker in here still. So I'm not going to go, don't want to go back into this if I don't have to. Shape that up. Get that to go up that direction. This to do this a little more. Since I darkened that other, I feel like I've got, again, a little bit more room to go darker here again and help really define the contours that I want defined. Go back in here and I'm going to refine this edge in here, twisting this around and going in here. I've got my B pencil, so I'm going to go in here and darken that edge on the inside of the apple because it's darkest, and that's really giving me that nice crispy edge between the lemon and the apple. I've got a that stem, I can go in there and refine that out a little bit more, make that shadow in there way darker. So I push the little stem of that lemon forward, and then using the darkness in the shadow to help define the edge of the apple again. I think I'm going to go back over here and just get this a little darker and crispier. And just really go in there. I've got my 4B. I can go in with my 6B though here and just go wild. So look at that. Just get that really nice crispy edge defined. 4B, B. So I'm just going to take that in there and darken this up just a little, so that way it keeps up with that value I'm seeing there in my setup. Take this around to make it a little bit more round in here, have it come back in on itself a little bit more. Get that just a little darker in there. Have this go back up a little bit there. All right, so I think I'm ready to leave my apple alone, and you see I've got my edges really nice and defined. I think I could probably get a little more refined over here still. Just go in there, and I'm gonna just sharpen that up a little with my pencil eraser and brush all the excess debris off. And I think I'm pretty happy with that apple. And let's start working on this lemon here, and we'll so I'm gonna go in here, and I've got my B pencil, and since I've done quite a bit of blending, I think I'll go back in and refine that later. I'm gonna go in here and refine some of this that's going on in here. I'm gonna use my kneaded eraser to lift a little bit of this value out of here, because I've got a little bit too much. It's a little darker in here than I'm interested in going. So let's see here. Just lift that a little with my kneaded eraser. And I'm doing a little bit of using that sense of diffusion by using my kneaded eraser. It looks like I went into the contour of my shadow. So I'm going to take my B pencil and just reestablish my shadow here. Do a little rebuilding of that form of the shadow, because I took some of it out with my kneaded eraser. Reestablish that, maybe go into here just a little deeper here too. Reestablish that, but not with a too heavy of an outline. Keep it nice and sketchy so it stays diffused, and I feel pretty good about that. I'm going to start really refining these tones and finishing out the edges of the lemons by refining the tone on both sides. So I've got room to go in here with my 6B. So here and here, get the edge of that refined and defined a little more down there. There's just a little nice moment of black that I can load down there. And it's a little bigger over here on this side. And that allows me to go in here with my 2B and darken up this edge. This is the darker edge, so you see I'm loading the darkness into the dark edge, and it allows me to develop it from this side by almost using a sense of an outline, really defining that sharpness, and then going back in here and keeping the value, make sure that it keeps up with that edge, that outline that was planted, because you don't want that outline to pop up. So that gives it a nice little darkness that it deserves. I'm going to go in here and develop this a little more. I've got a B pencil and I've got a 4B and I've got my 6B. So I'm going to use my 6B now that I've cleaned up this edge over here, and I'm going to twist that over this way again because of the way I've got my light. This comes out a little more like this, and it goes down like this, and it flattens out a little, gets dark in here, just sort of a little fish lip kiss kind of thing. It's longer here on the bottom half than it is on the top half if I look at that dip as a place to partition it into halves, and I do. So I can take this down here, put a little bit of a sense of an outline here to describe that that surface is a little bit deeper in tone than the shadow. Back here, this surface is a little deeper in tone than the shadow. This comes over, and let's develop this down here. I'm doing this with my 6B because I already know I've got quite a bit of room to move and stay dark with this value that I'm planting in here, because it's, the contrast between the shadow and the paper allows me to use two different reference points, a darkness and a lightness, to determine what my relative value is going to be. So I feel just really free to be using this 6 in here without any second guess, without any hesitation, to be using it with confidence. Moving this shadow, I see sort of a bird shape on this surface, so I like to emphasize like little different playful shapes when I see them. I might play around with them to a certain degree to to help give maybe add a sense of gracefulness, if you will, or maybe just add a sense of playfulness sometimes, and just add a little bit of artistry to what otherwise might be considered mundane. So I'm going to bring all of this down. Now that I brought that down fairly nicely, I'm going to bring all of this down to a much deeper level. It's not going to keep up with the darkness of this, but it will be much darker. It almost keeps up with the darkness over here. So I'm just going to take a little bit of artistic license with darkening up this edge, so that way I can have it stand out from the shadow surface a little more. So the shadow that it's casting on the other surface, this can go dark in here, little fish face dark in here. Have this slant down where it describes the contour of that lemon still. This goes up here, it's dark, and it's still darker than the shadow in the back, so I'm going to darken this a little more to get that to pop out and away from the background. This goes like this. It looks like I've got a little bit of a dent in here. It goes down here. Take this a little darker in here. And then there's my sort of bird shape. Now I'm going to go in with my B underneath here. This goes here. This comes in through here. And that's a little lighter in there. But all of this down here is it keeps up with this tone here and keeps up with this tone here. So I'm going to take that all down to that tone. I'm using my B pencil. So now I know I can go the other direction. I've got plenty of room to go over both of those tones because this B is not going to darken that 6B too much, but it will polish that surface and help them transition into each other a lot nicer. So there's that. This goes there, this all the way there. This comes back here like this, and all of this is fairly dark in here. I'm darkening up this whole side of, and I went a little too deep with my hatch marks there, but that's okay because I can just come back and cover it up. And okay, here we go. And here we go, darken that up, get this to turn, and all right, you can see that this surface now looks lighter just in comparison to the shades I just put down. I've got a little darker there, that's darker in here, darker in here. You can go a little darker in here. I'm going to take that and turn that, get that a little darker, and then just get those transition tones in there to get that darker, a little darker in through here, and a little darker in through here. Darken that whole thing up, get a little more value planted in there. And then that was with my B and my 6B. So I think I'm going to go in here with my 2H and sorry about the slurping water, but gotta stay hydrated. So let's see, that goes down there like that, and this, I did have a darkness there. I feel like I want to go back in with my B here and darken up this to move that back in value just a little more, darken that whole thing up, get that in there like that, get that in there like that, and then that's going to give me the room I want and need to go in here and get this as dark as I want. And I'm just going in there with my 2H right now, going back and forth with a cross hatching action, but because I want more of a softer tones, I'm going in with using the side of my pencil, and that's going to give me slightly softer tones that I'm looking for. So I'm going just using some back and forth action of the cross hatching, going over all of that and just polishing that out, getting a little double duty in here with my actions, moving this around. I see this does this really nice little bend in here, and then all of this is pretty much keeps up with the same value of this surface here. This goes out a little more, does a little pointy kind of thing happening in here. Get that moving out a little more, round it out, round it out. So way to here. Here it's a little lighter in here. In here I can go back in here, darken this up, take it right up into the apple. It's not going to blend out my dark line there so much, but it keeps the transitions between the two. So I've got like dark here, and then it gets a little darker in here. That's where that surface turns. It comes in and does a little flatness in through here, and comes back in and goes back down here a little flatter. Just darkening all of that up. I feel like I'm getting a little bit too directional, and I feel like that line's getting a little too hard. So I'm going to go back in there and go over this. I think I'm going to go over it with my B because my 2B just was, I mean my 2H just wasn't getting the coverage that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go back in here and darken all of this up because I just felt like there was not enough transition happening in the values. It was getting a little too separated in values, to like the contrast was just a little higher than I was interested in. So now I feel like this is a little better. This I can go down in value, went a little too far over with that, but that's okay. That's why they invented erasers. Go back in here, just lift that out, brush that off a little, and then yeah, just darken all of this up a little more. This can all take a little more tone. And I'm going in there with my 2H now because I don't want to go too extreme with the tone. So I'm being careful and cautious. So I'm taking that down like this, taking this in this dark. So I'm going to use a little more pressure with my 2H and go a little darker here in tone, get a little more volume happening on the surface of that lemon. Just take that in and blend it right into the cast shadow. Take that, darken it up a little so it moves a little more seamlessly. Take this out a little farther. Take this out a little farther, come back up on itself. All right, take that over here because we've got a little bit of a torque in the surface, and then just darken this all up from here to here. Keep that, let it keep pace with the value that I've established out here with the edge of that lemon. Take that out here, and then that's going to allow me to drop all of that down just a little more. Take this and roll this surface. It's got a little bit more of a roll to it, so I'm going to take that and roll that surface just a little more. And let's see, yeah, maybe in here too, break up some of that white because it's not quite that stark. So I'm going to take my 2B and darken this all up just a little more because I want a little more contrast between, I want to drop that down a little bit, so then I need to get all of this a little bit darker so that way that doesn't pop out quite as much. So I'm going back in and making this whole area in here, just describing it as just a little darker in value, tone, get that moved out there. And I think I'm going to have to lift some of that up. And so I'm just going to go in there and dab with my kneaded eraser so it doesn't take it out too drastically. Okay, so that feels pretty good. And then I'm just going to pass over that with my 4H so I can polish that out just a little. I'm passing over the entire thing with my 4H. Get a little darker in here and a little darker even in here. Take that down just a little deeper so it turns just a little more. Take that and take that. Okay, and that's almost finished there. Let's go in here and do some cleanup work. Get rid of all the smudges down here. Hold on to that. Get rid of all the smudges outside of my box. Clean it up, look really good. Clean it up. Get rid of all of the smudges, because even though I have my handy dandy papers, my paper towels, there still is a little bit of smudging going on, but not half as much smudging that would be going on if it were with my hand and I didn't have that nice little barrier there. So that looks really nice and clean. Go over here and clean this up. Clean it up. Clean it up, clean it up, clean it up. Brush it off. Brush it off, brush it off. Get rid of all the debris, because it's got debris on it. That's not clean. That's full of debris. I'm gonna go over here and clean up that line a little better. There we go. Get that really nice and clean. Get that nice and clean. Why bother making lines if you're not gonna clean up outside of them? Might as well. Look at that, nice and clean, nice and clean, nice and clean. Stay in the lines, just everything outside of the lines. Clean it up. Brush all that mess off. Brush it off, brush it off, brush it off. Oh, look how clean that looks now. That's nice and clean down there. This still needs a little bit of cleaning. Nice and clean, nice and clean. Brush it off, brush it off, brush it off. Nice and clean. Let's go over here. We've got some cleanup over here to do. You see, I'm holding the paper to make sure that it does not get all wrinkled in the process of me trying to clean it. So just applying a little bit of artist physics to it to make sure the paper is nice and anchored. If it's not anchored, it may lift up if I were to go up in that that general upwards direction when I do my erasing. So I see I still have quite a bit of smudging that's out over here, and this ought to clean most of it up. There's a little bit left there too. Hard to see initially when I have the area covered with my hand. I'm blocking the light, so you know, it's amazing how light allows you to see. That looks pretty good. I just want to go back in there, clean up around here, and that's going to allow me to clean up the edge of the lemon, get that a lot more defined. Give more contrast between the edge of the apple and the surface of the table. Get that more refined. Get rid of all of that. Just leave this really nice and crisp and white. All right, that is really nice and satisfying. I'm just going to leave some of that idea of the white going into there and a little bit of the smudged value. I'm going to leave it just for a sense of depth. I'm going to just break that up a little so it's got a sense of depth to it, that and then just pass that over there because it's too stark, a little too stark, a little too stark. There we go. Now that helps blend it. That helps blend it. Go back in here with I think a 2H should do it here. Go back in here and really sharpen up the edge of this lemon here. Going back in here with a 2H to sharpen up the edge of that lemon. Give it sort of an idea of an outline, but from the inside, and clean that up. So it acts a little bit as a shadow going around the corner. I'm gonna go back in here and just add a little bit of taking that, what I mentioned before, that artistic license, and blending that darkness in so I don't have such a strong sense of an outline, but I do have a real nice strong edge, and it has a sense of turning around a corner. So I think overall I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna go back in and put the cherry on my lemon, as it were, by, let me go in again with that light, really separate this from, there's more depth in here than I had drawn before. This gets a little filled in there. This gets a little filled in here and goes down around here. This is goes down like this. This has a little bit more darkness to it. It's a little darker than the rest of the lemon. This here is just describing that tip with a little bit more detail, and since I'm not really shading anymore, I'm putting in details, I'm using the tip of my pencil to do just a little bit more of a drawing action. I want to have this nice tapered little stem showing here, so I'm going to go in here and pop that highlight out, and then just put some nice little soft details in there. All right, and that is the that right there, folks. That is it. Let me brush that up. All right, that's it. There it is. Nice and finished. Cross my pencils. Put my pencils away. It's done.